Niger Delta Development Commission gets 11-man advisory committee.
I therefore want to urge this advisory committee to discharge its responsibility diligently and effectively.
Shelve your demands until we defeat coronavirus. President Buhari appeals to health sector workers.
House of Representatives to intervene in current ASU strike.
It affects the graduation of our children, particularly the masses' children.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we take on the second part of our discussion on economic implications of coronavirus, plus a partnership between Nollywood and the Nigerian army.
Coronavirus, which has ravaged China, Italy, and Iran, with isolated cases in Africa, including Nigeria, which already has recorded 2 cases, is progressing from being a global health emergency to become a major threat to many economies of the world, with far-reaching consequences on businesses and stock markets.
Absolutely, Kyria. Remember that this was what prompted our topic 2 days ago, that's Monday, when we discussed coronavirus and its economic implications for Nigeria. And our guests obviously were emphatic that since coronavirus is impacting negatively, firstly on the global oil price on which our revenue projections and by extension our national budget are predicated, there will be serious implications for our economy.
Of course, Kingsley, they noted that the 2020 budget was predicated on the oil benchmark of $57 per barrel. And as it stands currently, the crude oil price is fast going south, with postulations that it might crash below $30 per barrel in the coming days.
No question about that, Kyria. We are seeing the price war between Saudi Arabia and Russia. And the grave implication is that revenues for Nigeria might drop sharply, and funding the 2020 federal budget, which some economists had earlier described as being ambitious, might become even more challenging for the government.
And a little wonder, Kingsley, President Buhari was worried over the impact of the coronavirus disease on the nation's economy, and they swiftly constituted a 5-man committee on the eve of Monday to quickly assess the situation and advise the federal government on the next line of action.
Now, the committee is chaired by the Honorable Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, and it has a mandate to revisit and revise downwards the crude oil benchmark of $57 per barrel. But by how much will the crude oil benchmark be lowered, and what effects will the ongoing spread of coronavirus have on Nigeria's budget, the stock market, and economic sectors in the weeks and even months ahead?
There's no doubt that there will be consequences, Kingsley, if there's any sharp drop in oil price. Okay, well,
but as you know, you and I were all set on Monday. It isn't just the oil price that is of concern to us. We are seeing a slowdown. The shipping businesses have been affected, and China and Hong Kong, of course, Hong Kong is part of China, major hubs for shipping. So there's a slowdown. Aviation, there's also a slowdown in the aviation.
It's actually in all sectors. But for Nigeria as a nation, that relies solely on oil as a major source of revenue, the impact is going to be devastating if nothing is done. And I'm happy that the president is already doing something, to checkmate whatever will be the consequences.
Well, he's already approaching the National Assembly, of course, for a revision of the takeoff date of the VAT, which was increased from 5% to 7.5%. Kyria?
Yeah, these and more questions will engage our guests on Good Morning Nigeria today, as we have the second part of our conversation on the economic implications of coronavirus in Nigeria. It's good to have you join us again this morning, this beautiful morning here in the Abuja, capital city of Nigeria. My name is Kyrian Umayo.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I join my colleague Kyria to also welcome you to the program, reaching you live on the network service of Africa's largest television network, the Nigerian Television Authority. And we also have a second topic, as we had indicated at the beginning, and that second topic has to do with a partnership between Nollywood and the Nigerian Army. What is that partnership all about? Of course, find out later on in our conversation segment, which will, of course, today's program, as always, will include newspaper review, business, and others. In the meantime, let's take Kyria. I was just going to say sports as well, but I don't have time. You saw the thrashing of Tottenham last night, and of course, they've been eased out of the European Champions League. In the meantime, Musba Don Wahab, who is also a keen follower of sports, gives us the highlights of the morning news without the sports, by the way. Musba.
All right, good morning. There won't be sports this morning. Let's talk about news for now, Kingsley. An 11-man advisory committee has been inaugurated by President Muhammadu Buhari for the Niger Delta Development Commission, NDDC. This, the president said, is in furtherance of his administration's new vision for the area, as well as policy thrust aimed at achieving sustainable peace, security, infrastructure, and human capital development.
Advisory committee to discharge its responsibility diligently and effectively, working closely with the ministry. Our new assignment requires selfless service to our people in the Niger Delta. I look forward to seeing positive changes in the affairs of the Commission as well as on the ground in the Niger Delta region.
Meanwhile, President Muhammadu Buhari has appealed to workers in the nation's health sector to bear with the federal government in their demands as it braces up for the challenges posed by coronavirus to the economy. The president made the appeal when the joint health sector unions, as well as the Assembly of Healthcare Professionals, paid him a courtesy visit.
We are here, sir, to say that you help us get those very patriotic sons and daughters of this country, very patriotic health workers, to be recommitted, to be re-energized to manage the health system better for Nigerians.
Your case will certainly receive attention, but we must bear in mind the condition the country is now. Coronavirus is affecting what we so much depend on. Petroleum industry and therefore revenue. So please let us be patriotic.
Vice President Yemi Osinbajo says no stone would be left unturned in addressing all challenges confronting businesses in the country. The Vice President gave the assurance during a courtesy visit to his office by members of the Kano State Chamber of Commerce seeking government's urgent intervention in the epileptic supply of power in the state.
We have about 300 industries in Kano and it's abundant. We need intervention from the federal government.
With the energy, it will make our industry to be more competitive. More especially in terms of production, we can produce at affordable price so that we can compete favorably to whatever product that can come inside the Nigeria.
Into the National Assembly, where the Senate has passed the Companies Allied Matters Act Repeal and Reenactment Bill 2020. The legislators are to also embark on the Amendment of Finance Act 2019 as requested by President Buhari.
That the administrative effective date for the increase in value-added tax from 5% to 7.5% is the 1st of February 2020. That animal feeds in court are included in the list of basic food items that are exempt from value-added tax.
The House of Representatives has expressed concern over the strike by the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASU, and resolved to intervene and find a lasting solution.
What is causing this strike year in, year out? There are 3 outstanding agreements signed by the federal government and not implemented.
It's not just abrogating blame to the government. Who are the government? Is me and you. Each among us sitting in this green chamber and in this chair have known the economic situation of this country.
Mandate the relevant committees to follow up after leadership intervention to ensure compliance.
Because it affects the graduation of our children, particularly the masses' children.
Content providers from within and outside Nigeria have converged on the corporate headquarters of the Nigerian Television Authority (NTA) for emerging skills and content development to boost digital television, effective management and successful monetization.
Sit from analog to digital broadcasting. This cannot come at a better time.
No matter what platform, what television station you are, if you don't have content, there's no reason to be there.
And that's a bit of the news this morning. Good Morning Nigeria will continue after this break, and the second leg of discussion on the implications of the coronavirus on Nigeria's economy will be up for discussion. Good morning.
For your family, because 100% of our milk is sourced from our farms. This means that we control the entire production process from grass to glass, taking great care in every step to ensure the milk that gets to you is of high quality, great tasting, and enriched with essential nutrients that are great for your family. Available in Dano Cool Cow, Dano Full Cream, Dano Slim, and Dano Flavored Milk.
Not so fast. Look, I'm tired. I want to check out of this country for greener pastures.
Just calm down for a moment. Please sit down.
Do you have a job where you're going to? No, but someone is arranging,
Listen, Alinko. Checking out of this country without proper planning means one thing. Unimaginable begin. You know, I've been in the diaspora, but legitimately doing great things at home and abroad. As I've been saying, without the proper footing abroad, the risk is not worth it. Listen, Alinko, it's better to be home than be trapped abroad, or even end up in prison.
My name's Mr. Muftau Abiodun Balogun. We started this business 4 years ago, and this is the production outlet where we do about 4,000 to 5,000 birds per day. With the closure of the border recently, we've been experiencing massive surge in demand. Our sales per day now is going to be between 15 to 20,000 birds. We needed to expand all avenues because of the multiplier effect it's creating. And the most interesting thing about this closure is that many of my farmers today are farmers we recruited recently, and they are young graduates. What the government is doing will lead us right. And I can tell you, if the government sustains this thing, sky will not even be our limit.
And the program is Good Morning Nigeria. And next is business news with Abdul Karim Zurmi.
Nigerians are eagerly waiting for the reports from the Budget Review Committee set up by President Muhammadu Buhari to redeem the 2020 budget estimate. This committee was set up in response to tumbling crude prices, which may require cuts in the nation's budget. Chaired by Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed, the committee is set to review the $57 oil benchmark for the 2020 budget. Meanwhile, the Russian Energy Minister, Alexander Novak, says Moscow is open to cooperation with OPEC in a bid to stabilize the oil market. Russia had failed to reach an agreement with OPEC on a proposed oil production cut by 1.5 million barrels per day, but says doors are still open for future cooperation, with various tools including reduction and increasing of production. Saudi Arabia had announced plans to cut oil prices further to its buyers in a price war with Russia, forcing global price crash resulting in the biggest single-day loss in a decade. Now let's take a look at the Nigerian Stock Exchange to see how the market fared on Tuesday, 10th of March 2020. With business news, Abdul Karim Zurmi.
Many thanks, Abdul Karim Zurmi, for the business packet. Next is newspaper review.
Now we welcome Bayo Atayebi, our newspaper reviewer. Bayo, it's good to have you again today.
Thank you,
on the show.
Good morning. Good morning, Kingsley.
Yeah, Bayo, good to see you.
Thank you. Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, let's begin this review with the Daily Trust newspaper. We're going to go from top to bottom of the Daily Trust newspaper. Despite crack, anti-Oshomole NWC members set for neck. It's on page 50. Coronavirus affecting our revenue, says President Buhari. The story is on page 3. Peter Side shuns CBN roundtable over Emir Sanusi's banishment. You read more on that on page 7. Now, the lead story on Daily Trust this morning, it deposed Emir Sanusi held to court to challenge banishment with 4 riders. Sanusi wants Lagos, but moved to local area and then away. Dethroned Sanusi makes case for Emir Bayero. New Kano Emir to receive staff of office today. El Rufai appoints Sanusi vice chair of Kaduna board. All that on page 5 of Daily Trust newspaper. Of course, you see the photo story. You can see the photo story on the front page of Daily Trust newspaper. That's of course showing the new Emir when he arrived to the palace to take office. That happened yesterday. They call it the first outing of the new Emir of Kano, His Royal Highness Aminu Ado Bayero. And below that, we have a convocation. Unilag VC accused of abusing procedures, disregard to council, is on page 11. Zamfara Assembly relocates to primary school. Find out why on page 50 of Daily Trust newspaper. And now, no special treatment for Kalu, Darie, Nyame, Meto in Kuje prison. It's on page 10.
All right, let's also take a look at the front page of the Punch newspaper. The lead story, it's also on the Sanusi issue. It says Sanusi to challenge detention and forced exile. And Kano continues 2.2 billion naira fraud probe. 3 riders to that headline. It says council say deposed emir been subjected to maximum trauma. And may God bless us with good leaders, praise ex-Kano ruler. El-Rufai offers deposed monarch Kaduna board appointment. Details of this story can be found on page 2 of the Punch newspaper. So we go now up above that, from the very top. Border closure, customs make 697 arrests and 7.4 billion naira seizures. That's page 32. Senate queries $4 million payment to lawyer from ECA. ECA stands for Excess Crude Account. Stock market investors lose 656 billion naira in one day. That's page 31. Petrol imports gulped 1.7 trillion naira in 2019. That's attributed to the National Bureau of Statistics. 2 earpieces beside the nameplate, UNN, Union Loring, ABU, and others join strike. OAU shuns action. Union Loring is surprising, first time probably in 2 decades. Malami rejects call to pay recovered loot into Federation account. That's page 11 in further detail. And then you also see the photographs there on the front page, straight out of Kano, showing the new Emir, Aminu Ado Bayero, during, as Kirian also read from the Daily Trust, his maiden visit as a monarch to the Emir's palace in Kano. See the Rolls Royce, 2 photographs there that conveyed him to the Emir's palace. Makinde signs a Motekun bill into law and warns criminals. Gunmen kill ex-soldier, abduct 3 in Kaduna. Benue plans to strengthen anti-open grazing law and others. That's page 12. Former Minister Audu Ogbe emerges new ACF chairman. That's Arewa Consultative Forum. And FCTA shuts Abuja markets over attacks on officials. 1 trillion naira looting. That's the kicker. Bauchi to drag ex-governor Abubakar. So EFCC, page 22. Bayo.
Thank you. Well, the story of the deposed Emir of Kano dominates all the paper, and he has said that he accepts the dethronement as an act of God, and it will be best for us all. The Emir thanked all the people for the opportunity for him to be Emir since 8th of June 2014. He says, Allah that gives has taken back. He has appealed that all people should cooperate with our family so that the family and the people will all remain well. We pray that the dignity of the home and the family will not be undermined. He thanked the people and says that, well, God's will shall be done. Meanwhile, following the banishment of the Emir from Kano, he was said to have headed for Nasarawa State. The governor of Nasarawa, Abdullahi Sule, had to hold a meeting with first-class traditional rulers, among which were the Emir of Kefi and Lafia. And eventually, it was to take care of his accommodation and his upkeep. Initially, he was said to have been exiled to Opanda, which is in Toto local government area. However, after the meeting by the governor and the first-class traditional rulers, it was later said that he was to be exiled to Loko. There's already another indication that he has left Loko for another location. Meanwhile, there have been reactions about the deposition of the former emir. Former president Olusegun Obasanjo in a letter says that it is sad and it is also good. He says sad because it is undeserving, but it's good because he has paid the price for the path he chose, and it is in the best for the interest of our country and for our humanity. The People's Democratic Party, through Kola Olobodiya, has described it as a political blunder. Meanwhile, a professor of Islamic political theory in the Maitama Yusuf University in Kano has said that Emir Sanusi brought the problems onto himself by openly indulging in politics. Meanwhile, Aminu Ado Bayero, who succeeded him, yesterday has a formal outing. He moved to Nasarawa Palace, where he received homage from all title holders. He also sought the blessing of his mother. Meanwhile, his younger brother, Nasru Ado Bayero, has been appointed the Emir of Pichi. He steps into the throne that he left to become the Emir of Kano. So there are indications also that possibly today there could be a presentation of staff office to the new Emir of Kano.
Yeah, it's a good storyline. The issues surrounding, his removal is something perhaps people like me may not be able to understand. That's kind of politics, and of course, like Obasanjo wrote, his letter has two tones there. It's good, then it's also bad, and he made the line. There's a line there where he said that it is the path that the man chose to toe that actually resulted to what happened. So for me, it's a done deal. But what I do understand is the aspect of banishment. I don't know what that is all about. Was the person be banished from?
I think it has its roots in the chieftaincy law of the former northern Nigeria. He's not the first to be banished. You recall that in 2014, Emir of Jokolo of Gwandu was also banished. Incidentally, it was to the same Nasarawa state. At that time, I think it was to Obi local government area where he was banned. Later on, a high court in Kebbi annulled his dethronement. Even for Kano itself, during the era of the late Ado Bayero, there was a time during the era of Abubakar Rimi as governor of Kano, there was an attempt at the emir, which eventually cost the governor his second term bit in Kano. So there have always been that big challenge for Kano about the position of emirs and what have you.
Now, like this story, Zamfara Assembly relocates to a primary school. What happened?
Well, that story took me by surprise. I missed it somehow, but apparently there probably is some challenge with the State House of Assembly. I didn't quite follow that one closely.
Well, there's a story on University of Lagos which has to do with the convocation. University of Lagos had earlier advertised its convocation ceremonies to take place, but of course there appears to be some power play between the governing council and the management of the school.
The VC is accused of abusing procedure, the disregard to council,
and so on and so forth. But how I'm just wondering, because it was the NUC that then issued a directive for the suspension of the convocation ceremonies. As I said, these ceremonies had earlier been advertised. One of the points that had been reported in the papers had to do with who should deliver the convocation lecture. One said it was a minister of the Federal Republic. Another said no, they wanted a former head of state from somewhere in West Africa to, deliver the convocation lecture. But obviously, if you're having a convocation ceremony, all the principal officers are usually present. Chancellor, pro-chancellor, which of course would include your governing council, and then members of the Senate, before the degrees are then formally awarded. So the question that arises, because this is strange at the University of Lagos, to be honest with you, why is there this communication gap, as it were?
Well, even if there's no communication gap, the issue here is that someone has to take a decision on who presents the major lecture for the day. Someone, if it's not a collection of the members of the Senate, it could be the VC. Someone has to be the person to choose who will do that. So why should that bring a kind of discord? In such a university with a very reputable university of that caliber.
It couldn't possibly be one single individual decide. There's a ceremonials committee. Every university has that, or should have it. You would have a short list of persons, and then of course you have the visual debate, and then of course the committee would then agree and then pass it on upstairs to say this is what we are doing. But what is important is that a convocation ceremony is a festival, as it were, of that particular institution.
Of a university.
Yes, a festival and a celebration of excellence, and the fact that these persons have been through your crucible and you're now sending them out into the world. So why is this discord lingering?
I believe that the decision lies on the man who is the alter ego. After passing through other committees and what have you, everybody will not agree on who does what. At a point, someone will say, "Look, he's the VC. Okay, fine. This is your police, whatever. Okay." This is what I chose this person to do it. So
I think for the National Universities Commission to have intervened, apparently there must have been signals that there was danger coming. Absolutely. And therefore the best thing to do is for them to sort their acts together. The reputation of that institution is at stake.
Exactly.
So they shouldn't toy with it. That is a great university.
University, yes. Now let's go to the editorial this morning, which is very interesting, if you ask me. Now, no immunity for legislative officials. Let me just take one paragraph. The House of Reps has recently been criticized over the plan to extend immunity to principal officers of the federal and state legislatures. The bill for the act to alter Section 308 of the 1999 Constitution and extend immunity to cover presiding officers of the legislative institutions was sponsored by Shegu Odubumi of All Progressives Congress. But one other one, it is gratifying that some members of the House have lampooned their colleagues for even mooting the idea. Minority Leader of the House, Honorable Ndudi Elumelu, wondered why some members were promoting such an idea at the time Nigerians have been, Nigeria is in a critical situation with respect to security.
Thank you. Can I quickly comment on what happened yesterday? At a Commonwealth Day ceremony, Anthony Joshua asserted that I was born at Watford. My heritage is Nigerian. I come from Yoruba people. I am proudly Nigerian. I'm proudly British. He was at the Commonwealth ceremony where Her Majesty the Queen was also there. And interestingly, he added another one. He said, we as a people like what we call pounded yam and egusi soup. This is a food that is commonly eaten among the Nigerian people. Now coming to about the immunity.
It keeps talking, that's fine. I mean, it's a good thing that he remains our ambassador, but he has his next title defense in June. So enough of this pounded yam and stuff. Enough of this pounded yam and stuff.
His other half, his British counterpart, half of him is Nigerian, half of him is British.
Yes.
And the fact that he has two parts, the Nigerian part, will help him to overcome.
Well, we continue to wish him the very best, but
he's identified with Nigeria.
Precisely.
That's
and he continues to
yes, he's proud of being Nigerian.
Let him get out to business. That's what I'm saying. Go return to the gym, man.
Well, about the editorial, there has been concern that even the immunity provided for the president, the vice president, governors and deputy governors gradually elevates them above the law. The Constitution says nobody is above the law. But it has been thought expedient to elevate them above the law so that the challenges of them as executive heading the affairs of state cannot be encumbered by unnecessary litigations. However, there are people who think that nobody should be above the law, especially when there is a crime. Therefore, to give immunity for criminal liability is elevating individuals above the law. However, civil litigation that could just be nuisance to obstruct those executives can be at least provided, immunity can be provided for those. However, the recent development is that particularly Segun Odebumi was leading the debate that he cited the instance that, for instance, when Senator Bukola Saraki was being tried at the Code of Conduct Tribunal, it affected the legislative function, and now they want that immunity extended to presiding officer at the legislature, both Senate and the National Assembly.
Let me even speak like an ordinary Nigerian buyer. As I was Nigerian, there is no need for that kind of exercise. There's no point doing that. It's a kind of license for people to, be above the law, like you said, and do things they want. What is all this? Well, see, if your hands are clean, you don't have problem with these kind of immunities and stuff like that. As a member of the National Assembly. And again, can something happen and you change officers? You change officers. So what happens to the immunity when you change officers?
Save your breath. The editorial is saying that from a few opinion polls, Nigeria seems to be against extending that immunity.
Exactly.
There's nothing to do with that kind of. Sometimes we waste precious time, on matters that are really not particularly significant. By our trip, we would like to thank you for being around.
Thank you.
See you tomorrow. Okay, it's Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you on the network service of the NTA. We're taking a short break now. When we return, we'll be discussing two issues. The first will be the second part of our earlier conversation on the economic implications of coronavirus, and the other, collaboration between Hollywood and the Nigerian army.
Nigeria is our country, and it's the only country we have. Irrespective of religion, tribe, the heroes of our past did their best to take Nigeria to where it is today. It would be unfortunate, I repeat, unfortunate, absolutely, if we don't keep Nigeria intact. We must put our differences behind. We must let everybody know that human beings cannot live together without some differences. But at the end of the day, our country is Nigerian. It must always come first.
Get ready for the Unity Challenge reality TV show. Coming soon.
Engineering skills and technology define the quality of television transmission output. Training and retraining of appropriate personnel on the management of modern equipment is therefore a key competition strategy in the dynamic television industry. NTA TV College, Jos, invites relevant desk officers to special engineering courses as follows. 1-week course on audio engineering, operations and maintenance. Date 20th to 24th April 2020. 1-week intensive course on electrical power, earthing, lighting, uninterrupted power supply UPS, inverter and solar system. Date 1st to 5th June 2020. 1-week intensive course on studio broadcast equipment and outside broadcast operation. Date 15th to 19th June 2020. 1-week course on new technologies, optical fiber, IP technologies, automation storage and wireless technology. Date 10th to 14th August 2020. The venue for all courses is NTA Television College, near Old Government House, Rayfield, Jos. Course fee 40,000 naira per participant. Accommodation inclusive. For more inquiries, please call 0803-314-4383 or 0806-980-9807. NTA TV College, Jos. Training you to be the best you want to be.
Back for a minute to the old school. Everybody love me when I do what I do, cause when I come through I got the power of cool. The power of cool.
We have 30,364 individual, 6,437 household.
Boko Haram ya koro mu daga garinmu wanda ake cewa Doron Baga.
The government has done a lot of things. Some corporate bodies have also done a lot of things, but there's still a lot to be done.
We thank you for staying with us up to this moment on Good Morning Nigeria. And the first leg of our conversation is actually on the economic implications of coronavirus in Nigeria. And the topic was first discussed on this platform 2 days ago. That's on Monday to be precise. And for today, to set the tone for part 2 of the topic, let's listen to excerpts of the first part of the discussion as put together by correspondent Aisha Ubali.
And if we don't take all these measures, we're likely to have in the next 1 month, in the next few months, a situation where the income from oil and from other oil-related imports, which increases our revenue, will go down, and we will be feeling the effect in not being able to fund our capital budget and being challenged in even recurrence and salary.
58% of the revenue is from Lagos. The rest of the 19 airports can't break even. The 3 international, none of them, all of them together, is less than 18% of the revenue. What it means in effect is that Lagos is subsidizing the 19 airports. So if you push them and they said, look, we're going to withdraw the subsidy because we just can't, then we have closure of the area. Now, which transport is working in Nigeria? The road is death trap. The rail is a challenge. The only one that is Abuja to Kaduna. You've seen what.
But unfortunately, $17 billion of that money will be coming from China. From China Exim Bank. And the Minister of Transport reported that the April 2020 commissioning, official opening up of the Lagos-Ibadan railway, Standard Gauge Railway, will not be possible because the Chinese experts cannot resume work.
And again, except, of course, we also appreciate that Nigeria is one of the few countries where you produce a barrel of oil for more than $30. In other countries like the Middle East, they are doing it under $10. So the question will be, if oil dips to 45%, what can we be able to do to make certain that our production dips below $10.
It is worthwhile for the federal government to consider opening the borders. If it was just because of smuggling, because of weapons and other crime committed through the land border, I think since government has the capacity to even lock the border completely, they may also have the capacity to ensure there is adequate security there to supervise what is coming in and going out through the borders. I think
Now, those were excerpts from our conversation on Monday. That's part one of this topic. This morning, we have guests with us again in the studios. Professor Nazivi Dama, one of our regulars, is a professor of economics at the University of Abuja. Professor Dama, pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Good morning, and good morning, Nigerians.
Also here with us in the studios is Professor Uche Uwaleke. Uche Uwaleke is a prof of finance and capital markets at the Nasarawa State University in Kefi, and most recently, Commissioner for Finance in Imo State before they were judicially ousted. Professor Uwaleke, a pleasure to have you with us. Pleasure to have you with us on the program.
He has had the experience of being a Commissioner of Finance.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's very interesting. That's an experience. And also here in our studio, here we have Ni Kinsij, of course, is an economic and investment analyst. He's been here with us whenever we talk the economy. You're welcome to the program.
Very good morning.
And hopefully we're going to have another guest in Lagos. When we are ready for that, we'll let you know. He's Johnson Chukwu. When we set with that, we will certainly know. For now, Kinsley.
That's right. The gentlemen are here. So we'll give the right of first refusal to the two new guests, of course, who are also regulars. Niye, you were here on Monday, so keep your. So let's see. First of all, let's get your opening statement, Professor Nazivi Dama. We have all kinds of reports around the world, and it's also, some analysts will say, heartwarming that the Nigerian government, personalized by President Muhammadu Buhari, is already taking steps in light of the emerging numbers that are not salutary in any way. But what's your take on what's playing out in terms of the economic consequences of coronavirus worldwide, and most likely also for us in Nigeria?
Well, in reality, if you look at the happenings in the world economy in the last 30 days, it underpinned 2 or 3 issues. Number one is the serious interconnectivity of the world economy arising from globalization and information access, and the fact that natural and human resource endowments are varied across countries and continents. You realize that the salutary effect associated with serious production collapse in the Chinese economy arising from the containment of over 63 million people in just Wuhan region have had negative transmissionary effect literally on all the major economies of the world. Because remember, the Chinese economy is the second largest economy in the world today. As at 2018, it accounted for over 14.3 trillion US dollars of the global biggest economy's GDP of 86 trillion US dollars. So if you look at that, you realize that there is so much interconnectivity in the world economy. Secondly, whatever contingency strategies and plans economies could have devised to insulate their respective economies from this collapse, we now have another rider to the fact that a contagious virus that is suspected to have been produced in a laboratory has now had terrible consequences not only on the health sector but on the overall economy in the world, and that underlies the fact that our global economy is extremely fragile and can be susceptible to external shocks, seemingly simple but very catastrophic. Because if you look at the statistics of the number of deaths associated with other terminal illnesses on a day, it's much, much more higher than the deaths associated with the coronavirus. But because of the contagious nature of coronavirus and its ease of spread, particularly in tropic countries or within tropic climate, it gives a serious reverberating effect. Number 3 is the fact that whatever you do as a nation, you cannot insulate yourself from the global economy. And coming back to Nigeria, we can see that with all the safety measures we have put in place in terms of putting our GDP oil price benchmark below the existing market level at a seemingly comfortable level that will give us some excess. Now, one single occurrence, which is outside the control of the economy, can simply put all our plans into terrible jeopardy.
All right, thank you for your opening comment, but I'd like to take you back to the issue of coronavirus, being a creation of a laboratory that has not been proved, and of course, even Kingsley, remember 2 days ago when we talked about that, the WHO has not come up with any kind of a clarification of such, and presently we're not believing that that was what happened.
But the conspiracy theory gets some element of strength in the sense that the disease was first reported in China, but suddenly there is another report in Italy in a town that has no history of massive travel to China and spreading on a wider scale.
One man can just spread it across, just one person. Just like it happened to Nigeria, just one man. Even during Ebola, one man brought it to Nigeria. So let's not go to that for now. Let's first of all get the take of Uche Uwaleke, professor of finance and capital market, Nasarawa State University. Now, the strategic position of China when it comes to global economy has never been felt than now with the advent of coronavirus. Because from his analysis, it's very obvious, that China is very crucial when it comes to the world economy. He talked about interconnectivity and globalization, which is, of course, what is playing out now, globally. What's your own take, given the scenario or scenarios, if you like, across the world? Italy, South Korea, Japan, America now is hitting America so harder now than ever before. Yeah. So what's your take on the whole thing? And again, how do you now, bring it down to the Nigerian situation, which, of course, we're beginning to fight? Of course, the president just inaugurated a committee, to look into how Nigeria can, of course, stem the tide or whatever happens, with respect to effect of coronavirus on the economy.
Yeah, thank you, Kieran. Of course, the point has been made. China is the second largest economy in the world. And in terms of export, it's number 1. A lot of manufacturing activity takes place in China. And what is happening now is disrupting supply chains, around the world. So you find that markets are also reacting, negatively. In fact, it's been said that since the outbreak of the virus, that financial markets have lost over $5 trillion, taken off from financial markets. And of course, back home in Nigeria, the market has lost over 1 trillion, 1 trillion naira. Whether you're talking about the stock market in Milan, you're talking about even European stocks like the FTSE, FSTE 100. If you also go to Asia, the Nike 225 is also, plummeting. So if you look at all these stock markets around the world, including France, where the CAC 40 is also a measure of performance. So stock markets are, down. But the one thing I want to quickly point out is that in recent days, we are beginning to see some upswings in market activity. Even in China, the Shanghai index, an indicator for Chinese stocks, gained 5% just last week. And that is because of the fact that the number of cases in China of coronavirus cases is on the decline, compared to elsewhere. If you also look at the United States, for example, where in February, the Standard & Poor's, as well as the Dow Jones Industrial Average, 2 major indicators, plunged. In recent times, too, we're beginning to see a reversal of performance of Standard & Poor's and Dow Jones Industrial Average. And that's on the back of the response by the U.S. government, to this coronavirus scourge. Recently, the Federal Reserve, cut the Fed fund rate, which is the benchmark interest rate in the U.S., by 50 basis points, to stimulate economic activity on the back of the coronavirus, spread. Now, back home in Nigeria, we have also seen the effect on the Nigerian stock market, no doubt. As I told you earlier, the market has lost year-to-date return is close to negative 10%. That is year-to-date return. The market capitalization, equity capitalization has plummeted considerably to about 12.7 trillion naira now. So the effect is being felt on the market. But I also want to point out this, that if you look at the history of market performances associated with sudden outbreak of illnesses, whether it is Ebola, whether it is dengue fever, whether it is even the coronavirus. This is not the first time the world is witnessing the coronavirus. Maybe I should say it. You can Google it and check. Coronavirus was first reported in 2003, April 2003. Okay, then it was called the SARS. Yes, the severe acute respiratory syndrome, SARS. SARS was caused by coronavirus, and in April 2003, when it first manifested, markets also came down. Okay, shortly after, markets went up. The same thing with even the HIV/AIDS that was first reported in June 1981. We had the same market behavior. Even recently, in 2018, October, there was Ebola. Ebola came, financial markets also overreacted. And what happened shortly after? Markets also picked up. So what I'm trying to say is that this is a fleeting experience we are having. And as long as market participants keep focusing on the longer term, okay, we are not likely going to see any major upheaval, in our financial market. So for me, it is fleeting. Now, on the part of the federal government, of course, the point has been made. The budget was based on $57 per barrel. Look at what was happening. But of course, you also know that part of why oil price is dropping is not just because of the coronavirus. It is more because of the if you like, the battle for supremacy between Russia and Saudi Arabia, the battle for market share. Okay, Russia thinks that because of the increasing share production in the U.S., except prices go down, it will not be profitable for U.S. to continue to do so. So they want to force down price. On the other hand, Saudi Arabia too wants to, increase production, to force down price to be able to stimulate demand for her products. So that is what is really causing the drop in oil price. So not only because of the coronavirus. So I'm sure that once Saudi Arabia gets an understanding, a leading OPEC member, with Russia, which is the champion of non-OPEC members, once there is an understanding to cut output, for example, the effect again, it could be minimized. The Minister for Budget talked about revisiting the budget and doing possible adjustments. The major challenge I see there is that 75% of the budget is recurrent, including debt service. So if you're going to cut, it will mean you'll be looking at. It will be difficult to say you're cutting salaries, at this point, especially when minimum, wage agreements, have been reached. Okay, and on the part of capital, if you look at the money we are borrowing, 22.7 billion, he has made a point. 17 billion is coming from China Exim Bank. That's a bilateral loan. The bulk of it is bilateral. So the much we can do is to say, okay, let us make do with the multilateral components of that. That's the World Bank and the African Development Bank. Okay, while we suspend for now or try to prioritize what we want to do with the bilateral ones coming from Japan, coming from Germany, coming from French Development Agency, and then coming from China Exim Bank. Now, I can't finish making my opening without talking about the states, implications for states. It is going to have very huge implications for subnational governments because, of course, the state governments have also made their budgets based on assumptions, assumptions made by the federal government. State governments made assumptions based on $57 per barrel. Okay, so what that means is that if oil price is being affected now, that of states too will be affected. And the fact, if you notice, since December, allocation has been on the decline. And a lot of states rely on FAT to even pay salaries. Why did we enter recession in 2016? It was more because many states couldn't pay salaries. Effective demand, reduced, and so the country went into recession. That is what we should try to avoid this time.
Okay, Professor Waleke, thank you very much there for your broad sweep of the issues. Let's now bring in Nei Akinseju. Nei, I mean, that's part of what we have seen playing out since the outbreak of the coronavirus is that China, which of course is a major guzzler of oil, has a much lower demand for oil. And then suddenly, the spat between Russia and Saudi Arabia, has come into the mix. And oil, of course, is a major determinant of our national revenues. From what we are seeing, all right, there seemed to have been some uptick yesterday, but the figures remain well below $40 per barrel. I would like you to see a long drawn-out issue with regard to the confrontation between Saudi Arabia and Russia on oil prices, and so what would that really mean for us going forward in terms of our foreign reserves and then the knock-on effect on monetary policy and all that?
Yeah, thank you. I think the first set of anxiety, it's petering out, as it were, from my readings of the situation between yesterday and this morning. I think a new reality, is dawning on both Russia and Saudi Arabia. And like the international agency, the energy agency noted, the executive director noted, that part was definitely not needed between the two crude oil supplying powers. Because we are talking of a double whammy here. We're talking of oversupply and, of course, declining demands. So when you put the two together, it's a desperate situation that you are creating, not just for crude oil producing nations, but for the global economy itself. So I also got reports that Russia is now considering a meeting, but looking at between May and June. What will happen between March and May, we don't know. But I think what they are trying to do is to test resolve. Test the resolve of the shale oil producers. Of course, test the resolve of Saudi. Saudi, meanwhile, had come out to say that even at a range of $21 to $25 per barrel, it will survive. One, they have strong inventory, and of course, they not just about inventory. They have reserve they can unleash at any point in time in the markets. Russia is banking on a price under $30 per barrel that would injure shale producers because of the cost of production. So the whole dynamics is about fighting for market shares. And in truth, shale producers are taking so much market with the controlled supply, with the OPEC plus. But the reality now is that the crude oil producing nations cannot contemplate anything less than $52 per barrel. So there must be a way of coming together to move up to that threshold, as it were. As of this morning, the price had moved to $38.51, as it were. That shows a movement up. It's showing moderation, but for Nigeria, I think the important thing is to be cool-headed about what our approach should be. Going forward, the review of the budget has been contemplated by the Minister of Finance. I think it should be for adjustment, but for adjustment to either sustain or move up, but definitely not to reduce. Because even now, the U.S. is contemplating a number of fiscal stimulus. We cannot afford to go into another recession. We are just gathering momentum out of the valley, created by the 2016 recession. So what we need at this point in time is to be able to be creative enough. Yes, we are going to have shortages of dollar supply, as it were, but our foreign reserve, as constituted at this point in time, will still fund 8.5 months of merchandise imports. And of course, if you had imported services, perhaps 4 to 5 months, of that too. So to the extent of funding imports, we are still within the safe range. But what is important is to be able to also seek new financing sources, in a way to stabilize the economy, and make sure that demand is always empowered, because that is important. Either consumption demand, factory demand and all that, merchandise demand and all that. It's important we keep our head and look at that.
All right, very interesting. Gentlemen, I'm just wondering why, the feud between Russia and Saudi Arabia should affect the global oil market. And why we are so badly hit, if this continues, is the fact that we're just a nation that runs a mono economy. That has been there for many decades. And we wonder, how do we get out of that? Well, that may be a topic for another day. But, the last time the world experienced the economic meltdown, Nigeria appeared to be insulated from that, as the case may be. But I'm not sure we're getting as lucky as we were then, this time around, based on the consequences of coronavirus. That was one thing the prof said, Professor Owaleke said, that the market performance associated with a sudden outbreak of disease with global magnitude cannot be predicted, based on perhaps this kind of conversation that we're having. And when President Buhari, inaugurated a committee, his thinking was that we have to nip it in the bud. We have to see how we can now begin to plan and see how whatever heat that is coming will not be as devastating as one would expect. And I want to bring you in here to let us know, if you're a member of that team, what areas will you be contemplating for us to make adjustments? Because one, if they don't have gray areas to address. Now, how can we, be able to have or develop a thick skin, that can enable us to, withstand any shock, that comes from any sector of our development?
Kirian, I don't envy any member of that team, because I know they are on an extremely hot seat in view of the situation. Now, what has happened and the fallout associated with the collapse in the global oil market prices, arising from the glut in the market and the fixation between Russia and Saudi Arabia, is a clarion call for us. Remember, before 2019 election, the last Minister of State Finance indicated that the costs of production of a barrel of oil in Nigeria is one of the leading, or is one of the highest among OPEC countries. The average is $9. As of the time Kashiku left, it was around $21. And many people don't know about this. So a devastating crash in the price of oil not only reduce the quantum that will go into our country by the amount of the reduction, but also have consequences because of the high cost of oil production. Now, for a very long period of time, Kirian, we have said this, we are saying this, and will continue to say this. A population of 200 million people relying on a monocultural economy with structural adjustment programs initiated since 1986 on the 25th of September, if I can remember precisely, when the second-tier foreign exchange market was initiated and signaling all the reforms. Up till today, the oil sector represents the highest source of forex to us, even though it controls less than 10% of our GDP. Now, if you look at the structure of our economy, and what we are likely to go through, and with the preponderance of our expenditure on the recurrent, in the recurrent component relative to the capital, you realize that with the slide in the oil prices has serious negative consequences on the economy in terms of dampening aggregate demand and aggregate supply. But what is important is for us to have a wake-up from our deep slumber. This is an opportunity for extensive retrospection and complete change of orientation and behavior as far as economic management is concerned. 200 million people is a very big market. Everyone in the world cannot afford to relegate this market. But what will make this market attractive are the specific domestic policies that the economy need to put in place to make it as attractive as possible relative to what we see, how people are trooping into China, how people are trooping into India, how people are trooping into Brazil. They say charity begins at home. Now is an opportunity for us to do 4 major things. Number 1 is for this committee, if it can have the leeway, is to tell Mr. President and anybody that matters, particularly the governors, for us to have very honest, frank, and long discussion as to how we can actually reduce the cost of governance and the cost of delivering projects in Nigeria. So that this is the first step that we need to do. Everybody knows that the cost of governance is extremely high. Some governors have almost 200, 300 special assistants. What are they doing? If you look at the salary of the political office holders, whether at state, at federal level, is exceedingly high. So we need to have conversation about having realistic remuneration. But beyond that, the cost of delivering capital projects, whether at federal government, at the state level, is also exceedingly high. Let us work, let us talk, let us agree on a consensus, particularly using the instrumentality of the National Economic Council to have that so that we put the economy on a proper shape. Secondly, is the need for us to have a stimulus for the economy at the federal government level and also at the state level. But the question is, where do you get the finances to stimulate the economy? Precisely. Now, if you want to stimulate the economy in the context of lower oil earnings, is for us to do the first thing. That is religiously going back to development planning culture so that we prioritize in a realistic manner every expenditure at our all level, federal, state, and local government level. But importantly, to take specific measures, to change laws, to change policies, to change perception in order to attract so much idle money in international sovereign wealth fund that can come as public-private partnership funding. Because as I've said it severally, with the current law, with the current policy regime, nobody will massively take his resources and invest in Nigeria because there are relativities and opportunities that are more positive elsewhere relative to Nigerian economy. And capital is always looking for the best avenue to be able to have safeguard, to have highest profitability, but also to have highest level of predictability. Now, if you have national development planning culture and you review the laws and the policies to attract massive investment, it is possible. Now, when you complement that with domestic optimal resource management, it will send also a very big signals to others that you are serious. I think these are some of the things that we need to put in place in order to insulate the economy from the shock. But much analysts are predicting that the downward trend in the world economy arising from the coronavirus is likely to be not too significant, even though the IMF and World Bank have projected that the global GDP is likely to shrink by 0.25%. And if you look at the GDP figures of the 15 biggest economies as at 2018, is over 86 trillion US dollars. So we are likely to have a loss of over 425 billion US dollars arising from this virus.
Okay, Professor Nazir Vidama, thank you very much. And gentlemen, thanks a lot. I don't know. I just, we will have our guest in Lagos. We're going to introduce him shortly. It's also one of our regulars on Good Morning Nigeria. I mean, when you have had, shall we say, a virtual shutdown of major economic activities, doesn't it take quite a while to restart that? And what you lose in the lead time for you to restart, do you regain that almost immediately? And so when you are having I'm not a pessimist, but when I want us to be realistic. When therefore you are having this, say that when you're having the projection that, okay, this might not be particularly consequential, we can get out of it perhaps in the short to medium term. Let's look at what is happening. I mean, shipping activities have been disrupted. Major deliveries have also been disrupted. Airlines have cancelled their flights. And if you cancel a flight and an airline and an aircraft is parked somewhere, there are airlines that have hundreds of planes. We're not talking about those having one or two aircraft. Hundreds of planes with employees who have also been asked to go on virtual forced leave, unpaid. And so if it's unpaid, what then do you do? Italy, I understand, has suspended as part of its policy measure the payment of mortgages. Because if a country is on lockdown and people are not going to work and they don't earn money, how then do you expect them to pay their mortgages? If you don't pay your mortgage and there is a foreclosure and a forfeiture, of course you are on the street. So, I mean, the consequences could be there. But as I said, we have Johnson Chukwu, another financial expert, joining us from our Lagos Network studios. Johnson Chukwu, our pleasure to have you with us on Good Morning Nigeria again. I mean, the entire world is reeling, as it were, from the consequences of coronavirus and other matters immediately arising. From your perspective, what lies ahead of us as a country?